welcome back for another episode of Chasing Ghosts. This is the video series where I talk about those hard to find, those impossible to find comics, those just rare, really tough things for you need to do some legwork and kind of hunt down and track down to try to get yourself a copy. These aren't things you're just going to find up on the wall at your LCS when you go in there on a Wednesday. You're going to have to do some legwork to get some of these books because they are really not that easy to find. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Like, subscribe, hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see the selection of books I got for you this week, just hang out for a few seconds after the intro and I will be right back. All right, so I got another pile of books to cover for you. I asked the members what they wanted to see, gave them a few options, and they selected just some randomness. So basically, I just have a random selection of books. Surprisingly, this week, I actually will end up going DC heavy near the end, which I know is not something we normally do here, but you will see why. And then I do actually take a little bit of an angle as we get a little further along into the show. But to start us off, let's just go with some books that I think are worth taking a look into. So, first book up, Marvel Rising, #1. This is that alpha book. This is a 1 in 25 incentive done by Peach Momoko, one of Peach's early variants that kind of hit right out of the gate way back in March of 2019. Print run on this is estimated to be about 15,000, so the incentive may only be around 600 copies. Again, remember, these are estimated numbers. These are not set in stone. This is not gospel. This is simply getting the estimated print run off of Comicron and then doing that basic ratio math to get that possible incentive number. It's the best information we have, and it's just to give us a framework, an idea of what may be out there. Now, apart from this, we can look into the CGC census and see how many have actually been submitted and graded. And for this one, we do have a decent number. There are 151 copies graded for this book. So if there really are only 600, a quarter of them are graded. 116 of them, for that matter, are 9.8s. And then we got 17 9.6s, 9 9.4s, and then a few others kind of rounding that out. Now, this book, despite there being maybe 600-ish copies, does actually sell pretty well. This is a few examples that I found. The most recent examples, you can see 9.8s can sell for $465 with 19 bids there. There are 9.4 sold for only $160. That one had 12 bids. A 9.6 sold for 218-ish, and that had 23 bids. So a lot of action on those auctions, but still, maybe they came in under the asking, like what a normal asking price can be. Because if you go all the way back to December, you can see a 9.8 buy it now got $925. So that auction a couple of months later, on February 4th, ended up being half the price of that buy it now from back in December. You got to watch sometimes when you put things up for auction, you may not get the return that you were hoping for if it's not a book that's like hot. Like this isn't a book that anybody's talking about. This isn't a book that anybody's looking for right now. So this is not the type of book that I personally would recommend anybody throw up for auction because you're probably not going to get the eyes and that you need to get that kind of traction to get you the best price possible. If you are a seller, as a buyer, absolutely take advantage of any auction you see pop up for any of these books because there's a good chance nobody's going to fight you for it because they may not even see that it's out there. With that said, what is out there? For this particular book, there are 4. I found 4 right now. Looks like they're all 9.8s. There are 151 of them, or actually 116 9.8. So 4 of them are on the market. Looking for $485, $575, $900, and $900. We'll see. We saw what the last one sold for, so maybe that's where the new listing there is trying to seek that most recent price, while some of the others may have been sitting there for a while trying to hold out for that $900 that somebody got back in December. Good luck to them all. We'll see where this one ends up, but for now, multiple copies. We know where this one's going to end up when we get to the end of the show and do our recap. But before we get there, Let's take a look at another Marvel book. In a similar vein, we're going to look at this Spider-Woman. I think this is Spider-Woman Alpha, #1. This is a Stacey Lee cover, also a 1 in 25 incentive from April of 2016. A decent print run on this one, where it is an excess of 50,000. So the incentive is potentially just over 2,000 copies. That's a lot for what we normally cover here. With that, as expected, there are a decent number in the CGC census with 120 graded copies there. 83 9/8s, 29 6s, 10 9/4s, and a few more filling that out. Little less than the Marvel Rising, despite the fact that there are more than 3 times as many copies potentially out there. There are still less graded copies, which is kind of interesting. But Stacey Lee doesn't have the same draw that Peach Momoko has or had, especially at the time of when that Marvel Rising book came out. So that's something else to factor in as well. With that, this book only found a couple of sales, and it was not cheap. So you can see here, raw copies sold $300 back in January, and also in January, a best offer on $500. So, I didn't bother digging in to see what the accepted price was, but you can figure. I mean, $300 plus is what we're looking at here, possible for that book. That's a lot for a raw 1 in 25, especially one that may have as many as 2,000 copies available. But with that said, if you want to go shopping for one, you got a lot of options because there are a decent number out there. I'm only showing you 4, but there's more than this available, and these 4 all happen to be graded, but you can see the prices they're looking for on all of these CGC 9/8s. They are looking from anywhere between $820 and $1,200. It's a lot of cash. It's a lot of cash for this book. But once again, we know where this one's going to end up. So let's move on to our next Marvel book. And I think this might be our last Marvel book for this week. Spider-Man, The Black Cat Strikes. This is the video game Gamerverse variant done by David Nakayama, 1 in 25 for issue 2 back in February 2020. I remember when this came out. I kind of wanted one, but it kind of came out of the gate a little hot and was like pre-selling for like double ratio. And I don't generally like to spend more than ratio on variants, even if I really like them. So I balked at the price. And now I find myself without a copy, kind of wishing I had one. But alas, maybe I'll get lucky one day and find one. For that matter, let's see what's out there. Only about 10,000 plus on this one. Gamerverse, it was like a weird like mini series kind of thing. So this incentive could potentially, and I say potentially because again, remember, these are estimated numbers. I'm just giving you there for reference. Potentially only about 430 copies of this out there. It's not many. But there aren't as many in the CGC census either, so maybe that number is pretty close to the mark. Considering, again, this was a popular book when it came out, but there are still only 40 copies graded in the census. 34 of them are 9/8s, but only 40 total. With that, this is a book that actually does sell pretty well, so it does change hands often enough, as here are some example sales that we have recently, within as recent as March 4th, a 9.8 sold for only $76. Don't auction. I'm telling you, that's what happens. Because when you look at the other examples, one bid on a 9.0, somebody got for $65. Another 9.8 back in January sold for $132. That one at least had 12 bids. And then earlier in that month, $100 got somebody a raw copy. So somebody bought a raw copy for 25% more than a 9.8 just sold yesterday. That's what an auction will do to you. Just saying. Nobody's talking about this book. No one's looking for this book. Auctions can kill you if you're trying to get the best price that you can. You're better off listing it with a buy it now, take offers, accept what you want to accept, how much you want to get. And grant, if you don't care, and this was like, good on whoever got their $76. I just feel like they cost themselves some possible cash there. And if you look at what the asking prices are, you can see they're a little bit more. They're not extreme. We're not talking hundreds, but still, raw copies are still seeking $100 to $110. Still well above that $76 for that 9.8. And the other two 9.8s that are out there, there's more than this, but the examples I have, at least in front of us, $165 to $200. It's at least $100 left on the table by throwing it up at auction. That's all I'm saying. Granted, if they didn't auction it, maybe they didn't sell it at all because maybe the market doesn't want to pay those prices. I'm just saying it's not a good look. So while many people will say, well, the auction price will tell you the true demand of a book, yes, that is fair. But at the same time, you're talking about a book that you're not finding the market that's looking for that book. You are opening your window for sale over like a 5-7 day period and hoping the person who's looking for that book sees your listing and places a bid. That's not always the case because people aren't constantly looking for the same book every day, like consistently for throughout a year. Like it kind of comes in waves. Like it's how I search. Like I remember things and go, oh yeah, I was looking for one of those. Even having them on my eBay watch list and get daily emails about new copies being listed, I don't always remember to go and check. And things get missed and things get forgotten about because, again, it's not on the forefront of anyone's mind. So, yes, by and large, auctions could tell you a more accurate price, but not always the case, especially with books like this. Now, we're going to pivot on over to DC and we're going to do DC the rest of the way. And there's a reason for this, of why I decided to do this week. But we're going to start here with something more familiar. Rose Besh. This is Wonder Woman Black and Gold #5. I think we covered the Nakayama issue 6 on Variant Heat Check not that long ago. Had the SNS boys take a look at that one. But this is #5. This one, 1 in 25 from October 2021, was popular as it came out of the gate. Print runs, not that bad, but these were really rough estimate numbers because we're talking about 2021. This is pandemic time. This is when we start to lose our print run accuracy. Even though the original print runs, even on Comic-Con, may not be 100% accurate, they really started getting into the realm of best guesses because of how the files and the different distributors, etc., started playing out. So with that, 19,000 incentive, maybe just under 800. In the CGC census, there are a whopping 150, 3 9.9s, mind you, and 134 9.8s. 3 9.9s. Interesting. But even with that, not a lot of recent sales, only a pair that I found over the last 3 months. A best offer on $260 for a raw copy, and a 9.8 took a best offer on $275. Again, I didn't dig into the actual accepted prices. It just was one step too far. That's not the point. Just giving you ballpark information so you have some sense of what the market is doing and how many, as far as volume goes. It's not so much about the price. But the price for the asks, more than these 4, but these are 4 examples. You can see 175 to 240 for some raws, 299 with 27 watchers on a 9.8, and a 9.8 SS is asking for $600. So, yeah, not a cheap book, mind you, if you're looking for one. Decided to go outside the box a little bit, but still kind of sticking it in the realm of looking at some of the covers that are featuring a female character. So I moved on to this Joelle Jones Superman American Alien #3. This was a popular miniseries when it actually came out. It had a little bit of heat behind it because people were expecting reboot Superman. This is where they're going to go if they do some. That kind of faded over time, but it was still popular when it came out. And these incentives at the time were also popular when they came out, but may not be the easiest things to track down now. This was back in 2016, mind you. Like I said, Joelle Jones, print run on this was just under 30,000, so there should be over 1,100 copies of this out there. In the CGC census, however, there are only 33 graded copies. Not to say that everybody has to get everything graded, and maybe this wasn't a book that saw such a demand that it felt that everybody had to get their copies graded if they got one, but still, only 33 in the census, 29 8s, 11 9/6s, and then a couple others kind of filling that out. Recent sales on this book. Best offer at $60 for a raw, and then a 9.8 took a best offer on 110. So, not too expensive. But as I said, it's also not that easy to find because when I went looking, I only found one, and it's a raw copy. It's 10% off, but it's still $83 for this 1 in 25. So not super expensive, but still not cheap, and not a lot of options. Because as I said, I went looking, I only found one. So park that one aside for when we do our wrap up at the end. Because now I'm going to pivot into the topic that I kind of wanted to get into for the rest of the way here. I mentioned the 2021 numbers on that Wonder Woman Black and Gold. Numbers got a little rough as far as the estimate goes. The rest of the way here, these are books that were released within the last year or two that may not have even any estimated numbers. So we're just going to have to see what we could find with what's out there as far as info goes using the CGC census, what's sold, what's available. So with that, let's take a look at this book first. This is Stargirl, The Lost Children #4, the 1 in 25 incentive. This is a Todd Dock cover. This came out last February, February 2023. So just over a year ago, this came out. This is kind of homage to the original Flash comics cover, and they included the girl there in the fastest girl alive. Put her on this cover, like mixed in with the art. So interesting concept. I remember when this came out, had a little bit of heat coming out the gate. But considering it came out just last year with having Lunar, Diamond still distributing, Penguin, and etc., there is no consistent source for print and run information anymore. It just isn't. I mean, there's some rankings that Comic-Con will provide, but ranking doesn't tell us how many ordered, printed, or anything like that. So we really got no clue, or I have no clue, and I have no way to give you a sense of those numbers. So don't know what the print run might be or what the incentives might be. But what I can tell you is that there are only 15 copies in the census on this book. 13 9/8, a 9/6, and a 9/2. Not that many. There are also none that sold within the last 3 months. Okay, so that doesn't necessarily mean that there's no copies available. Just could be that there's no demand and nobody's looking for this book. Fair, also possible. But when I did go looking for this book, I only managed to find one copy. And it happened to be a copy in a lot with the 1 in 25 incentive for #3, both of which are graded 9.8s. So that's $270 they're looking for two 9.8s. May not be awful. This one came up when we were talking about this on SNS, and I told the boys then, like, I was planning to do this week because I found this interesting that we don't know what the print run could be, and this is a recent book, so you would think that it's still kind of fresh in people's minds. They have copies, they got copies to get rid of, copies to move, sell, etc. There's no movement. There's none available. Well, one, I should say. There's one available. I find that interesting. So how tough is this book really? I don't know, but it seems tough, at least right now. This moment in time, this snapshot of time that we're doing this show on March 5th of 2024, there's only one out there, and none sold the last 3 months. Interesting. That carries over to a couple other options I have here for you. Do you remember this book? Another book that got hot right out of the gate. This is Tim Drake Robin #7. This is also a 1 in 25 incentive variant. This is from March of 2023. So this is a year ago now. Exactly a year ago. Serge Acuna, pretty cool cover. I know a lot of jokes made about this cover, like, hey, shirtless, shirtless Tim Drake. Okay, nothing wrong with that. But what there is something wrong with is the fact that I don't know how many are made. So no print run numbers, no incentive numbers. And in the CGC census, there are only 6. So this was a book hot out of the gate, made hot 10 lists, made top 10 lists, etc. You would think this is something that a lot of people would go and then get graded to get the maximum price because it was pricey coming out of the gate. It's pricey now too, but there's only 6 in the census: 4 9/8, a 9/6, and a 9/2. Copies do sell though, but as I mentioned, they don't sell for cheap. All raw, $230, $250, $200, $250 are sale examples over the last 3 months. $200 plus for this 1 in 25. I told you this got hot coming out of the gate. It was granted, it was like 50 pretty close, pretty quickly, and then it was like 80, $100 plus. Now look at it, 2 to 250. And if you wanted to buy one, despite that, despite these copies selling, it seems like anytime a copy comes up, it moves because right now Nothing. So you come up empty if you wanted to buy one right now because, well, they get listed, they sell for that asking price, $250, which for Raw is impressive. Impressive for a book that's only a year old. But again, we don't know how many there are. Maybe somebody has a stockpile out there. Who knows? These things are all possible, but we don't know. Now, this might not always be the story. You may be thinking, oh my God, all these recent 125s, every one of these is going to be impossible to find. That's not the case. I picked a few examples that are tough, but that's not may not always be the case. But here's another one for us to check. This is another book. Came out, some interest right out of the gate. It's a Nathan Zerdy, Deathstroke Incorporated #5, also a 1 in 25 incentive. This goes back to January 2022, though. So this is 2 years old. But still, no print run on it. So I can't give you an estimate of what we're looking at here. But what I can tell you is, in the CGC census, we do have 74 copies of this one. So over 2 years, more people have submitted this one. 63 98s, 96s, and then a few others. Copies have sold. Not for as much as some of those other books, but copies have sold for bunches 142 to $400 raw. Park that in your brain for a second, because then there was an auction for a 9.8 that only got $152. Are you seeing what I'm telling you about auctions now? It's a cheap way to get some of these, cheaper way to get some of these books, but not the best way to maximize your profits if you're a seller. 142 to $400 raw. And within a month of all, this is all within like a month of itself. Auction, 13 bids, 152.50. Now, put all that aside and look at that top listing from February 22nd. That is a 9.9. Granted, it's a PGX 9.9, but it's still a 9.9, and it was only $71 at auction because it's PGX. And apparently, a lot of people don't like PGX. You get all the cat pee smell jokes they're still carrying over from years ago. I get it. But even taking a gamble that a PGX 9.9, if you were to crack it and submit it to one of the other places, yeah, gotta probably do better than 71 bucks. So whoever made that purchase probably did all right for themselves. But once again, it was at auction. So just make a note of that. When I tell you about auctions, this is what I'm talking about. With that said, available copies, of which I found 4. Exactly 4. 9.8, 230, 239. So basically 240. $300 for a signature series 9.8. A raw for 170 bucks, and another 9.8 for $190. I feel like at this point the raw has probably got to come down considering where the 9.8 prices are. I mean, that's only like, it's only like a $20 difference there. It's just not 170 to 190. It's going to cost you that much more than that to grade it. So the raw might need to kind of come down a little bit, especially when you see the 9.9 sold for 71 bucks. But with that all said, these are just numbers. This is just information. If you are actually looking for any of these books, you make the call of yourself what you want to do with any of this. I'm just find this interesting. So that's why I look into this stuff. With that said, I got another one for you. Very colorful, very bright, vibrant Batgirls #6. This is also a 1 in 25. This is a Ryan Gonzalez cover from May of 2022. So not quite 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. So we still don't have numbers. This is why I was, like I said, this was the kind of theme or angle I was going with for this month or this week. Just to kind of, let's see some of these recent variants that may be tough, what we're looking at here. And what we're looking at is only 5 copies in the census on this thing. All 5 are 9.8s, but still only 5. Nobody bought one recently either. I mean, Batgirls isn't the most popular title. I mean, we can guess, but Batgirls isn't selling the same volume as Batman. It's just the fact. Now we don't know how much less Batgirl sells than Batman, but we're talking about an issue 6 as well. The newness is worn off. Print runs could be lower. 1 in 25s. How many stores are qualifying for this? Doesn't seem like there's that many. Consider we got 5 in the census. We got none sold in the last 3 months. And if you wanted to go and buy one, well, you'd think there'd be stock, and there isn't. I found one. They want $185 for their copy. Just saying. Just saying. Now, for our last book, I'm going to take a look at the 2 things I actually have been openly critical of over the last year or 2. It's just personal. It's just a personal preference, personal feeling. So let's look at it. I'll try to be the most, balanced that I can be and try not to be too biased. So, Nightwing 100. Issue 100, Dan Mora cover. I like this cover. This is the 1 in 100 incentive variant from last year, March 2023. So this is a year ago, which means, we're not getting a print run on it. Fine. Fair. I like this cover. But my problem with this one at the time is that it was foil. You know how I mentioned DC foil, especially last year's foil. They've gotten a little bit better, but last year's foil, it's just dull and just muted, and it's just what could have been a very bright blue with some almost near negative space, near color bleed type of cover was just, to me personally, felt it was ruined with that foil. That was just dull and muted and dark and just blah. With that said, a 1 in 100 on Nightwing 100. Yes, Nightwing had a lot of buzz on it because it was nearing that 1 in 100 mark. A lot of people were reading it, getting excited, but still don't know how high the print run went, considering we only got 20 in the census. So over the last year, only 20 copies graded. 15 9/8, 3 9/6s, and then a couple others. Copies sold on this thing, not many. $150 for one back in February for a raw copy, and then 378 back in December for a 9/8. Not too bad a return on the prices, but again, I just the foil was just not a fan of. And if you wanted one, or if I wanted one, well, we only got one option right now, and that's a 9.0 CGC 9.0 that wants $200. Not too much to work with there, is it? But that's not the only thing I've been openly critical of. Again, if you watch my Wednesday watch list where I give you the rundown for new books coming out each week, you'll see the other thing that I like to complain about and blame the marketplace and most of you out there who watch this stuff, because I'm not the one buying them, is incentives on later prints, reprints, if you will. So here we have the same issue, same cover, which I like it, but this is unfortunately a second print 1 in 25 incentive. It's not foil, positive, but it is an incentive on a reprint or later printing. Don't like those. I just don't like the idea of incentivizing reprints. It's just not, to me, the point of a second print or later printing is to get people a copy who may have missed out because they might have gotten priced out on a book that got hot, etc. The whole idea of the rarity of these later printings, well, they made less. Yeah, I get it. They're obviously going to make less of all the later printings, but they're still reprints. So let's keep this all in perspective. Reprint of a first appearance is, to me, not a first appearance anymore. It's a reprint of it. You could make another printing 5 years after the character came out. Does it really hold the same sway and same importance? So we can make all the arguments we want of whether, well, the second print came out 2 months later. It's still 2 months. The character's been around for 2 months. It's not the first appearance anymore. Just by literal definition, it can't be. Came out 2 months later. It's a second print. But that all said, again, I don't want to get on my soapbox complaining about this. I'm just explaining that this is a second print 1 in 25, and that's why I did not get one. I don't like them. I have no idea how many there are, though. No clue. But I got to imagine there aren't many, because I feel like there wasn't really a need for a second print because there were a lot of covers for this for issue 100, a lot of cool covers. And I think most of the market got satisfied. And the CGC census is kind of backing me up on this because there are only 2 copies graded for this second print. And again, this came out just 2 months later, I believe. I think this came out in May of 2023. But there's 1 blue label and 1 signature series, 9/8 of this second print, 1 in 25. It's not a lot. Definitely not a lot. And I don't know what the market's willing to pay for this because no one has bought one in the last 3 months. And I don't know what the market even wants to ask for this because when I went to look, I couldn't find any copies available. So once again, maybe these are really, really tough to find. And yes, rarity is a factor, but always remember rarity alone does not equal desirability or high prices. The market will tell you that because the market is what the market is. A comic book is only worth what somebody will actually give you for it. You can look at numbers in books, online, other people's sales all day long. That doesn't mean your copy is worth that. Your copy is only worth what the person you are dealing with will actually give you for that book. So just keep that in mind. With that said, this week's books, I got 11 books for you. 5 of them, the 3 Marvels and a couple of the first DCs, we'll just call these hard to find because there were multiple copies. There were like 3 to 4, at least 2 or more. So if 2 or more copies available on the market, you know how we do. They're marked hard to find. Meanwhile, the other 6 books I talked about just now either had 1 or none. And I think there was about an equal amount of ones and nones because I think there was like 1, none, 1. No, maybe more ones. Doesn't matter. 1 copy or no copies makes me feel comfortable in calling these 6 ones ghosts. But this is just a moment in time. Next week, new copies can hit the market and it's no longer a ghost. But for now, thanks for stopping by and checking this out. That's my call for this week. Hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully you found this informative. Hopefully you found it interesting. Feel free, comment down below, open the dialogues, have some discussion. Don't just complain about variants. That argument gets old. If you don't like variants, that's fine. You don't have to like variants, but you know, what do you want somebody to say if you just go and say, I don't like variants? I'll say, okay. You don't. Fair enough. But if you want to actually have a dialogue discussion, you guys know me by now. I will have it with you. So just put it in the comments down below. And with that all said, make sure you come back tomorrow for the TAC show. We will be tier listing some Transformers, some OG Generation 1 Transformers, as well as covering some under the radar comics and some first appearances you might not be, all up to date. Some, some lower tier forgotten type characters, etc. Doing some of that, as well as all the other fun stuff covering the news that we do every Wednesday live on the TAC show. And then come back for the Hot 10 later in the week. Qualified, SNS, Tales from the Dark Side, our other live shows running every day over the weekend. And then Wednesday watch list on Monday, and we start it all over again. Next Tuesday, I probably won't do another Chasing Ghosts, but I'll give you one of the other various series that I like to do, whether it be a toy video, trade secrets, talking about those hard to find trade paperbacks, maybe a bargain hunters, maybe just a hidden gems, last to know something. Not sure yet. Whatever comes to mind, that I feel like covering, I'll throw out to you guys next Tuesday. And with that, plenty more content coming your way. So keep telling your friends to keep growing the channel, and I'll see you all later. All right.